it's probably not like a typical story that you hear because the three of us, like if you know Startup Weekend, it's basically like the teams are choosing their own projects that they want to work on. And we didn't like any of those, so there were like three grumpy Germans in the corner. And we were like, no, we don't like that. And then we was like, why don't we just sit together and do something by ourselves? So we had really good experience throughout those 48 or 72 hours. And we decided to meet like a week later and to talk about things because we were in similar situations between jobs or just finishing university. And at this point we said, okay, hands down, let's just, we all want to start something. Probably, there isn't a better timing than now. So yeah, within 2 weeks, I basically quit my job at this point and started a company self-funded with two guys I just met, basically around the corner. And why did I have the confidence in this crew? Is because we had very diverse background. We had one guy focused very much on the finance sector. He was working before in Porsche, in Lidl, in the accounting and financial controlling department. The other one was more focused on online marketing, and I myself had a software engineering background. So we thought, okay, this is actually quite a good team, quite a good setup, not only to get things done, but also to be interesting for investors.
And all of you were based in Barcelona already?
All of us were based in Barcelona.
So that's lucky.
And
it all survived, the founder team survived for the entire 2 years.
Absolutely, from the beginning until the end. Yeah, this probably against the odds, as you know. The founder team splits up is probably one of the most recent or the most common reasons that startups fail. That didn't happen with us. We established pretty clear rules at the beginning. We said like we have this 2 against 1 rule. So whenever we have to make a decision, we discuss whatever has to be done, or everybody has a chance to introduce their points, and then we just vote. And whatever is the outcome, all three of us are fully supporting this decision, even though maybe one of us initially didn't want to go this way. And this worked out really, really well.
Cool.
From easy decisions up until which do we go with, which company do we buy, and so on.
So what's GetYourHero about? Why cleaning services?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, super passionate about cleaning.
Exactly.
And,
or not cleaning.
Or not cleaning, exactly. No, actually, so since we just met at this point, it was very hard for us to find an idea that we all passionate about. If I would found a company now with a friend or something, it would be different because we would know each other and we would know, okay, this is the direction we could probably go and so on. But so for that reason, we basically decided, okay, let's just not go for something we're passionate about, let's just go for something that is hyped. So why not? And
kind of a rocket internet approach.
A little bit like a typical German thing on let's just look, exactly, let's look what's out there and copy it and make it better or faster. And so at this time, I think Google Ventures just invested like $40 million in HomeJoy, which was the original American idea. There was another US company called Handy, they're still around, that also raised around 60 million. Then there was Rocket Internet-based Helpling from Germany, a couple of other competitors in the UK. And so we thought, okay, there's so much movement in this market, there's so much money getting invested in this. Let's just start the HomeJoy of Southern Europe, right? And this is basically how we pitched the idea initially.
And what made you think that you're going to be better at execution than, let's say, Helpling? Since Rocket Internet is, Rocket Internet, Berlin-based, super good in execution, and very good in, or known for, now kind of less successful, but at least 2 years ago, I think it was the top of their success story, and they're very good in expanding into new geographies as well.
Exactly.
So how did you think that, just speed, get faster than them?
Well, you can't beat Rocket Internet with speed. I mean, they have unlimited resources at their disposal, so this is absolutely not a chance. No, their strongest point of being like super fast in execution is also their weakest point because they don't pay attention to details. So we wanted to have this mixture between expanding quickly but reasonable with our means, and just do a better job in terms of customer satisfaction. Like when you come to cleaning, it's really the most intrusive service you can offer to somebody. It's much more complex. Even like this took us quite some time to understand that. And for example, Uber, this Uber driver, you can't do anything wrong. Like unless he kills you on the road, you will be okay with the service.
He won't get into your home.
He won't get into your home, he doesn't touch your personal belongings, he gets you from A to B, and if he gets you there on time and relatively cheap, you're happy. But every single one in this room has a different understanding of what is clean for my house, right? It's like something that's clean for me, maybe it's not clean for you because we have different understandings for that. And at the same time, it's super hard to control or to train our professionals in this. So it's a very, very complex business, and actually, up until today, there's very few companies out there that manage to actually get a very high satisfaction level. And this business, being concentrated on a consumer base, was very much depending on the retention of customers.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean? It basically means after you acquire a customer, very expensive over different channels, you want to keep them as long as possible to increase the lifetime value of those guys and to actually make at some point a profit. And what we were seeing, especially with Rocket Internet, was they attracted guys pretty easily with couponing and so on, but they just couldn't retain them.
Yeah. So maybe let's talk about that shortly before we ask the audience what they would like to hear more about. You started as a business to consumer company, where you could basically, as a private person, spontaneously get a cleaning person to clean your home. And then you quite quickly realized that that's a bit hard to implement, and you moved to a B2B model, at least partially.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just share with us how quickly did you realize, and how quickly were you able to pivot?
Yeah. Actually, not that quickly. Like in terms of our total lifespan, GetYourHero was around for like 2.5 years, something like this. So we pivoted around 8 months before we actually merged the company at the end. So it was more on the mid time frame of GetYourHero, but exactly for many of those reasons that I just mentioned. Very, very logistically challenging business, very much depending on this whole autonomo situation here in Spain, where with falso autonomo, you cannot really employ cleaners, but at the same time, there's a lot of regulations going on without going too much into detail now. And we just saw that B2B customers, because we tried this a little bit, just stick much longer. For them, cleaning is such a low priority, which doesn't sound very sexy right now, but it is, because it's such a low priority. Once you convince them, they just stay. Like, they just want to have a clean office, obviously. So the only thing that we had to provide is that they get a clean office, that they're happy with this. And like over the last 2 years, we got quite good at this, and so we decided it's much cheaper for us. It opens up for us complete different acquisition channels, not only traditional online marketing, but also over more traditional business development or direct selling. And so yeah, we basically pretty early on already tested B2B parallel to B2C, never really focused on it because the whole hype, as I said, the whole idea of founding this company was really much centered around going with the hype, with the movement of the market. And so this whole hype was centered around the B2C model. Yeah. But at a certain point we realized, okay, the movement in the market is slowing down, people are getting, other people starting to buy companies out, there's a bit of a saturation in the market going on, and we just wanted to expand our field. Mm-hmm.
And was that decision internally in the founders team, or did you get a friendly push from the investors?
It's both sides. Yeah, it's both sides. Like obviously, we were always looking to push into the right direction ourselves, but every now and then, of course, investors got also involved. Especially there was also in Germany a company called Service Partner One that does something similar. Because we actually didn't completely just switch into cleaning for businesses, we actually switched for complete facility management. So what we did, we developed an app for the iPad. So what we basically did is we went to those guys to an office, put an iPad in their office, and they basically had an app where they can order everything from cleaning to handyman to vegetables to water, restocking, and all of those things. So we were like the
offering.
Exactly. So I personally don't even call it like pivot in the sense of, or in the strict sense of a pivot, but more of a, making the scope a little bit bigger.
Okay. For those that just came, there's still seats in the first row. If you don't feel intimidated. Right. So as you see, Sebastian can tell you a lot about how how the business developed, but also he acquired investors. So you both had an angel round and a seed round, and then the exit. And then interestingly, I guess for many people in this room, the platform is actually developed on Ruby. So we can go into different directions. I just want to have a show of hands. Would you like to hear more about investors' journey, or more on kind of technical side, you know, roles as CTO, getting the talent, developing in Ruby? Where do you guys want to go? Investors? Okay. And technical side, Ruby, and okay.
And who's just here for the beer?
It's more or less equal.
Yeah, it's
right?
really equal, yeah.
So decide. I'll just start maybe just quickly about the CTO role. Your role was very clearly technical in the team, since the other two co-founders were coming from other disciplines. How did you develop into this role? Being still quite young, starting a company, I assume that at the beginning it was quite different than at the end of the company, because you had to hire people, introduce processes. So how did you grow as a person, and also how was introducing processes and software development to discipline the team? How did you experience that?
Okay, yeah, cool. As you said, like the scope of my work changed completely throughout this journey. There was rarely a month where I did the same that I was doing before. Obviously, right at the beginning, without funding or actually self-funded, I was very much hands-on. I was building the MVP, the minimal viable product myself, and then my role was really being the interface between the business side and the technical side, because when you develop an MVP, it doesn't really matter of code quality, you don't think in long term, you don't think about software architecture behind it. You just need something very quick that allows you to validate your business, right? And this has nothing to do with the final product that you will ship out at some point throughout the journey, because maybe you don't know that if you're going to be around the next 3 months, so there's no point in wasting your time in developing something, you know, with clean coding and test-driven development and that. I know you're all learning this right now, you should do that, but not for MVP building. It's a completely different topic. It's just about speed, getting something out there that looks nice, that obviously does a certain amount of the tasks already, but mostly it's about execution of speed.
Plus, it probably works out because you're probably the only person developing, or two people developing, right. So if you're not, constructing a clean code, it doesn't matter. Right?
Also, nobody ever looked at this code, so it was just me. I could hide it very well. And so yeah, exactly that's that. So this was the first couple of months up until we got funding in. It was me hands-on, super much. Hey, why don't we test this and this feature? Why don't we add this? Was very close with marketing team and just testing different hypotheses, how we can attract people, how we can optimize our online sales funnel, and so on. The actual app behind that did all the booking and all the booking management and so on, in the latest stage was quite complex. It was multi-language for more than 50,000 users a month, in Spanish, in Italian, in Catalan, in Spanish, in French, in English, and so on. For different currencies, for all different kinds of VAT models and so on. But the original app that I built was completely front-end facing. It was completely in Angular and hooked up to a Google spreadsheet. So we actually raised, I think, 400,000 with a Google spreadsheet. But this is the focus in the first couple of months, no? And then, exactly as you say, this shifts completely as soon as you have a certain funding. And if you start building a team. And I was actually, and I'm still doing this right now, in any hire I do, I always hire people that are better than me. Or there's no point in hiring somebody who's worse than me or as good as I am, because...
How did you test it?
Well, there's no easier task than testing the skill set of a developer. It's super hard for a marketer and all this, or for sales, but for developers. I had a multiple step process. First, I had like a short, phone interview with those guys just to see if they know the buzzwords and so on. But then I realized, like guys like Ironhack, they teach them buzzwords, and then they trick their way through this, and it's like, okay, this is not sufficient. So I actually gave them, a small challenge where they had like 24 hours to solve. It was depending on what part I was working on at the moment, either front end or back end related. And They just had to do a 24-hour challenge. I always called it like this. But again, this was not foolproof either, because obviously they could just give it to a very good developer at home and say, because they could do this remotely.
Yeah.
And so the latest stage how my hiring was looked like was phone interview first. Then I obviously looked at their GitHub and all those projects they claimed they worked on, and actually looked at what they committed and so on. Then I made a remote coding challenge, and then we even had an in-house challenge. So the best 2-3 guys, we got into the office, and they had like I think 4 hours, half a day or something like this, to code a very specific or to fix or to find bugs in a certain thing. I always let my other developers, come up with crazy challenges. This was actually quite fun for them to think about stuff to fuck up other people. And but this is super tangible. Like you can hire extremely well for developers. It comes down to a hard skill, and
there's enough talent in Barcelona. Wasn't an issue.
It's tough. So that's why good guys that you're doing this here. It's definitely tough to find good talent here. You have a couple of plus points that count for Barcelona in every respect, namely internet. Yeah, nice weather, of course. You have a lot of international talent. In the end, I think I counted it the other day. Throughout all the time of GetYourHero, we had like around 60 people working for us, and we had people from more than 27 or 28 nationalities working with us.
Cool.
So a super international team. So we have very international talent. But obviously you don't have the super competitive salary here. So you have to compensate in other ways, you have to give them responsibilities and so on. And that's exactly what I did. So my first hire was a guy who is 10 years older than me, who worked as a CTO before in a couple of other companies here in Barcelona. And he's much better than me. And that was great. So I got him, and we hit off really well at the beginning. We had this, we talked one language, not only on a technical level, but also like he understood where I wanted to go with the product.
Yeah.
So over time, I actually introduced a couple of those processes. We had a lot of mix between Kanban and Scrum at the end. I mean, you always have those methodologies, very clear, written out. Okay, this is Kanban, this is Scrum, and then there's reality. And reality looks completely different, because you do have to ship, you do have people who are not there, it's just, the word agile becomes a different meaning there, not in this strong sense of agile development, but more in you have to be flexible in how you do things. So it was a gradual shift towards those methodologies. And also for me, it was a gradual shift from being hands-on and coding myself to managing a team at the end of, I think, 8 developers.
Mm-hmm.
And even that I gave away to my first hire at the very end, and I was concentrating more, and I rebranded myself as CPO, Chief Product Officer, because it was basically on the interface between the technical side and the business development side.
That's a pretty common development, I see. So front end Angular and back end Ruby?
Exactly, yeah.
Any questions from the audience on the technical things, running a company as a CTO, hiring people, developing a product based on Ruby? Anybody? Those people are interested in the technical side?
No.
Alright, then maybe let's cover, that's actually the one thing that you mentioned about your first hire inspired me to move to the investor-oriented questions, because you hired this guy who's better than you, older, and yet he stays in the company.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he liked you
also,
as a person,
and I was
convinced about the business idea. But quite often people stay if they believe in the company and the idea behind it, and if they can participate in the success. So did you, with your first hire, incentivize them with shares?
We did have a certain stock option pool for early employees. I think this particular one, he did get shares in the end. Exactly. So this is basically how a certain percentage of the company you reserve for key employees, and mostly in coordination with investors or with the board of directors, you decide how much of those shares you want to actually allocate to certain persons. And it's a really, really good way to keep people motivated in the long term. With this person, it's a very, very special story with this person. I guess he really liked the idea of this dynamic environment that we were building. We had a really good team structure in GetYourHero. Like, we were really like a team. We had like every Thursday we got drunk in a bar all together, like from intern to CTO and so on. Like, we were really a team, and we still, you know, are in close contact even now that the journey for most of them is over. So this was much more than just a workplace for this person. He really enjoyed it. He actually earned less money than in his job before. But at this time also we were the fastest growing startup in Spain. So there was a lot of things going on, and especially from a technical point of view, it was very challenging because, first of all, he could take the lead, and he could decide from an architectural point of view also in which direction he wanted to go, and he could, you know, shape this whole thing. And for a developer, this is a very interesting point that he doesn't have to touch legacy code or correct bugs from somebody. No, he was building the product, you know, by hand. And then obviously with more funding there come other you know, ways of incentivizing people like salary and shares and so on. But this should never be the primary motivation to join a team like this, because obviously you can go to Sing or to God knows
sure.
which big company and they will pay you better for sure. And this is not the point about startups.
And then one of the things that I found really interesting about GetYourHero is that you went from 0 in funds to €2 million within 7 months.
Yeah.
Can you just share, you know, your investor search journey, and basically how did you go around finding the right investor and convincing them to getting to GetYourHero?
Exactly. So the first couple of weeks, self-funded operation, basically, just putting down some money of our own, and at the same time we were obviously looking in Barcelona, mostly throughout the ESADE network, like a business angel network, and we got in contact with one German, one Austrian guy. They had a very good track record in the startup scene. One of them founded Groupon in Southern Europe. So they also knew what they were actually doing in the consumer market. So this was after, I would say, like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, something like this. We got a first investment of 30,000 euros, which actually allowed us to get to this CTO guy on board for at least for a couple of months and so on. And it also allowed us to, you know, put more money down for marketing activities and so on. Because one of our focuses, as you mentioned earlier, was you know, a lot of competition, a lot of fast-moving competition in Europe. So the only chance for us to do that was to just mimic the same behavior, and so we were going on to a land grab approach. So we moved within 6-7 weeks from Barcelona to Madrid to Rome to Milano to Paris to Marseille. So obviously we need people who speak French, Italian, and Spanish at the least. And you have different law regulations in those countries, so we had like a lot of things at the plate on the plate at the same time. So we divided basically some technical stuff, some business stuff, and then of course most of the time in this early period we just, you know, chased money around. So we started pitching in front of the ESADE and in other business schools, a couple in Madrid and so on. And I would say like 2-3 months into the journey, we got this first investment round of 400,000 in total then. Which was, you know, backed by the spreadsheet. And because you just don't have time to do it in the right way, you know, like not within 4 months if you want to do it. And then right after that investment round, we decided, okay, let's go fundraising again, because that was good fun. So next day, we went out and actually talked with a couple of bigger VCs in London and Madrid, and in the end we settled for some German VC in Madrid.
Okay.
And this,
so representing a Spanish fund,
exactly.
The German guy.
Exactly. It was his own fund basically, but he settled in Madrid. And so yeah, within 7 months we went from everybody puts down some little money to in total a bit more than 2 million from very much seed, angels, and also, you know, some VC money.
And how did it change for you, you know, running your own company and having full decision about everything, to having somebody in your board of directors? Probably
it was a very good experience.
Yeah.
I mean, for us it worked out really well because those guys, first of all, were very hands-off. which
Not always happens.
not that doesn't happen very often exactly. So we appreciated that. At the same time, they gave us access to their network, to their knowledge, to their previous experience themselves. So whenever we wanted something from them, they actually helped us out, but they were not very pushy in those directions.
Mm-hmm. And maybe something on the exit.
Sure.
Was that your own initiative? Was it pushed by investors? And how did it happen?
Yeah. Well, let me just catch up a little bit. As I said, initially, this business model was not chosen by passion, but by the projection of what could come out of this, right? So, and as you know, like what you're aiming for is this typical hockey stick growth, where you basically month over month have to, acquire many more customers, and you have to grow, exponentially, basically. And we did achieve that over different ways throughout this short period. As I said, one typical way is just geographical expansion, which makes it easy because you tap into new markets, which you can easily, explore for a certain time. Then you have different other channels that you can use, like couponing and so on, that also gives short-term growth. We actually also bought a competitor. Actually, we bought Helpling, the Spanish division of Helpling. That also gave us a really good boost after a certain time. And then you just, you come onto a point where you say, okay, first of all, there were international competitors were kind of failing because of different reasons. Very, complicated business model. Homejoy with 40 million backed went bankrupt. Helpling reduced their countries from 14 to 7 or 6, something like this. So the movement in the market wasn't really good. And so we had basically two choices: either to go full in and say, okay, we invest now in the next 10 years, and we acquire some other smaller players here. We go for bigger funding round, which we could have done easily because we were still in a good momentum for us, or maybe we look for other things. So it was basically this mixed decision, and our main investor was on board with that. He wanted to keep his shares in the new merged company with a local player here, and we basically approached them at the beginning of this year.
So you approached them directly from the team. The investors were probably helping you, but they were not the ones.
No,
contacting.
we were driving the
process.
negotiations
Okay, cool.
as well.
What questions do you guys have about investment round, working with investors, exit? Anything that you would like to know more about? Go ahead.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the valuation methods and how you guys were round to round valuating the company.
Yeah.
Especially the first round of 30,000.
With the
that's the most exciting one. It's the most important one. Like, if you fuck this one up, it's not going to be fun for you. As I said, like we raised those 30,000 after a couple of weeks actually, and we had physically no tangible assets whatsoever, and we had 20 customers or something like this. So it's very hard to put a price point on this. So we said 1 million, which is of course absolutely ridiculous because it's completely overvaluated. But what we realized very early on, and this was true for all of those rounds that we were going through, is it's very much like your traction that you have in your tangible assets and all that is a very small factor. The most important thing that we realized, and maybe you can say some things about that as well, is the team, is the funding team, or the founding team.
Sure.
Sorry, and this was just we just hit some kind of jackpot over there because everybody could see the potential, everybody trusted us in that, and as I said earlier, this was definitely not the reason why we at the end decided to merge it with another company and go into different directions. This worked out really well. So this was one of the reasons why we could say, okay, yeah, we don't have any tangible assets. Yeah, we don't have any customers. Yeah, we don't have a validated business model. But you have us and don't find a better founding team.
So you actually set a valuation for the first round?
We set the valuation for the first round, and then obviously, it's like some, back and forth.
So you backed it up with a story, because that's usually how.
That's how it is, exactly. Especially if you go for early funding, what do you go there? Okay, yeah, we have 20 customers, and we have a customer acquisition cost of X, which is absolutely irrelevant because it's just 20 customers. And as soon as your bigger competitor enters, those numbers are not relevant anymore. No, so yeah, we basically gave the full we're gonna conquer Southern Europe story, and we were lucky enough that those guys
Believe in the story.
believed in the story, believed in the team, and didn't like Rocket. So,
I mean, from my experience, quite often at this early rounds, up to let's say $250,000, you today do a lot of convertible loans as an angel. So you basically give the money, and then you said in the next round of investment, I'm gonna get a 30% discount on the valuation of the investors if that happens within 6 months. And that's very practical, I find, because you just have no idea how much the company is valued, right? So you just postpone the problem to later. But at this last round, that's what I was asking. I was wondering how that was valued. In the last round, I guess that was more kind of KPI driven.
Absolutely, yeah. As soon as you come to the level of VCs, there's no 1 million. No, there's obviously a much more professional way of how this is handled and completely KPI, very, very neutral. Of course, the team is still important, but you kind of already, prove that you can go from A to B with this team. You can operate, you can hire, you can, sustain yourself over a certain period of time. You can get traction. Now it's just a question. The question is just how much is this traction worth? Mm-hmm. And so this was completely KPI driven. For that, like for me as a German, it's a nice thing because very numbers driven, and it's very easy to argue like this is A, this is B, this works.
Unless the numbers are not on your side.
Unless the numbers are on your side, exactly. Yeah. Luckily enough, they were.
I think there's one more question, right?
Yeah. Talk about the reputation of an investor that you got. So I guess that you evaluated investors before accepting the money, or what recommendations can you give us in that?
Yeah, it's a totally a two-way road there. Like you have to also choose your investor. Definitely, you have to see how you come along with them. I really recommend go drinking with them. That works, and we did with all of our investors. And you have to have this, this clicking moment with those guys as well, because they, especially nowadays, they say like some things like we don't only put money down, we put smart money down. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. I just don't believe in this. You want somebody who believes in the vision that you are having and doesn't force his vision on you, but who supports your way of thinking. And we had a couple of deals that we just said no to, like even with a higher valuation, because this is not the number one priority in this stage of your company. You want to have as little noise as possible around your core business. You want to be able to focus 100% on your core to grow the business, to make it better every day. And if you waste your time in unnecessary discussions with investors, that is just not helpful at this point. It's actually never helpful at any point, but especially in this early phases, this is just disturbing and distracting.
I really suggest if you're interested how they really treat their companies, to ask or tell the investor that we would like to speak, or we're going to be reaching out to some of your portfolio companies, or we just met a portfolio company of yours, and if they feel uncomfortable or don't want to give any context, then it's kind of a bad sign. Any other questions about the investment round? Dante?
Well, it's basically at what point of investment rounds was your company ever profitable, and at what point of the investment rounds did that happen?
No. No. As I think 95% of startups. And that's why you go fundraising, no? Like if I'm profitable, I don't need external funds, no? Unless of course you go for expansion or something like this, of course. But in this super early stage, especially like our main acquisition channel was online, and this is quite expensive nowadays, especially if you go for mass markets. As I said at the end, we were serving more than 50,000 customers per month. So this is quite expensive to acquire those kind of guys. And if you follow this approach of land grab, of try to be fast, basically everywhere or in your core market, you just need external funding for this. No? Obviously, you sit down with the investors and you do have a plan in place how you eventually want to become profitable, like reach break even or so on. But Amazon is not profitable. Okay, if they're not profitable, then I think it's okay for 1 year.
But they're not profitable intentionally.
Oh, of course, and so is a startup. No, like we could have easily, absolutely correct. We could have easily reduced our costs and be profitable, but this is not the point of a high growth startup. you're in a growth phase, and at a certain point when you reach, like a peak where you say this is market saturation and so on, and now we don't have a potential to easily tap into new markets, let's make it profitable. And this is where it comes, where sometimes it gets a bit ugly or sometimes it's nice, but at some points you cut costs and you basically just, drill down to the core market of your customer base that, makes it profitable for you. But we were not there, we were full in growth stage.
Okay.
We basically, we had like month-over-month growth in our best month of, and I'm not talking about the first 2-3 months where it's from 20 to 100 or something, I'm talking about from jumping from 1 month 10,000 to 18,000 customers, something like this.
Mm-hmm. That's impressive. And from the investment experience, is there something that you would have done much better today?
Oh yeah, oh definitely. I mean,
what's the biggest learning from investment?
So many. Super green, obviously, when we started out, and especially in the early rounds, we should have consulted some experienced entrepreneurs at this point, because basically the first term sheet you sign, it makes it either super unattractive or attractive for other investors to follow. So we were in a situation where we had those 2 early business angels that introduced some very weird terms that at this time didn't know better. And this basically was always a point of discussions in later, stages of negotiating with other investors. And there's a lot of tricks that you can, not tricks, but best practices that nobody tells you, obviously, from the other side. How you can shape your term sheet in a way that is fair still for both sides, but at least not a disadvantage for you.
Did you consult a lawyer at the very first round?
No. No.
Yeah,
We thought we were smart enough to do that, and that was not smart.
It's very, very common that the first agreement sets the rules for the next agreement. So if you have some very bad terms, it's very, very hard to get rid of them.
I know of 2 startups actually that didn't get follow-up funding. There was a VC who wanted to put down a certain amount of money, and then they looked at the term sheets, which is mostly at the later stage in the due diligence, and they were like, okay, this is an impossible clause, and if your early investors don't decide to take this one out, we will not invest, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super important, ask people, if you sign or if you draft a term sheet, ask people. Actually, even a step before, if you draft a letter of intent, that's something that is not legally binding, but this basically sets the playing ground for the term sheet or for the shareholder agreement. Because the shareholder agreement is basically just something that lawyers come up with, but the letter of intent is the actual stuff you negotiate. No? So don't be like, okay, yeah, it's just a letter of intent, it's not important if it's not in there. No, what's in the letter of intent will for sure come up. If you reopen this, investors don't like that. Because and this makes sense, I mean, you have to go back on the table to negotiate and so on. It's just a waste of time. So whenever you have something, address it right away, and there's never a too early point to address those points.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Any other questions about investment? Good, I think that's a good point to get some beers.
Sounds good.
And if you have any more questions to Sebastian, just grab him and ask.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Sebastian.
No, absolutely.
It was very cool, and thank you, Eva.
Sure.
By the way, for people that are not attending Wagon, I was pregnant. So time for some networking and some drinks. And thanks, until the next time.
I like it.
I wanted to ask you a question.
You can also ask me privately.
You can also check the messages that I will send to the group.